Sophie Cunningham goes in the post-game press conference and confirms what we've all known all along. This locker room is split, and she uses the term different islands going on in this locker room.
It's finally out in the open. Sophie Cunningham stepped to the microphone after another tough loss, and she didn't just give the usual scripted athlete talk. She delivered a bombshell that echoed across the league.
And we talk about this. We are circled on everybody's schedule. Everyone, no one likes us, right? So everyone in our locker room, that's the only type of people that we have that we can lean on. And we got to be better in that area. We have got to stay disciplined. We have to stay focused. We need to get consistent, and we got to lean on each other. And I think that we've kind of wavered a little bit on that. We have our own islands, but as one of the leaders on the team, I got to do a better job of grouping people.
We have our own islands, Sophie said. Those words were not vague metaphors. They were a stark revelation that the Indiana Fever's locker room is fractured beyond repair.
That's a locker room fracture. That's what that is. That's a fracture in the Fever locker room.
Fans had speculated for weeks that something was deeply off within the team, and now the whispers were confirmed loud and clear by one of the team's veterans.
Sophie Cunningham, in the post-game interview, speaks on this team and the islands within the locker room.
Cunningham, a respected voice in the league, didn't hold back. There's a little thing going on in the locker room, it's not good, she admitted bluntly. This wasn't just about disagreements or typical team tension. This was a public declaration of a team in crisis.
I think that we've kind of wavered a little bit on that. We have our own islands, but
that's not good. She's basically as good as said, we need to get, we just need to get better at being teammates.
For every Caitlin Clark supporter, those words were particularly chilling. The star rookie wasn't just battling opponents nightly on the court. She was battling isolation and disunity in her own locker room.
The Indiana Fever are in a disaster situation right now.
And here's why that matters more than ever. Caitlin Clark isn't just another promising rookie. She's the star of the WNBA, a player many consider the most important female athlete ever to step into the league. Her popularity has shattered records, drawing unprecedented viewership numbers and fan engagement. Caitlin Clark is literally the needle mover, a generational talent around whom the Fever have built their entire identity. But Sophie Cunningham's stark revelation tells us that identity is crumbling.
That the locker room with the Fever, I think there are some preferences in the locker room where these young ladies differ in how they handle or how their preferences in their personal lives, and the locker room is divided somewhere along those lines.
A year ago, even in the midst of losses, Indiana's locker room was tight-knit. There was mutual support, visible camaraderie, and unity behind closed doors. Players rallied together, lifting each other emotionally, even when the scoreboard wasn't in their favor.
And I can't remember a point last year where I felt like the team, the players itself, where they were floated apart. Everybody felt like a unit. And unfortunately, it felt like Christy Sides was the weak link.
Erica Wheeler, Nalissa Smith, these veterans weren't just teammates, they were emotional anchors. But this year, without them, the dynamics have collapsed. Cunningham herself pinpointed this absence.
We got no Erica Wheeler. We got no Christy Sides, the chaperone. We got none of that.
But the blame doesn't just rest on missing veterans. The front office has made baffling choices that have fractured team unity. Take Dana Bonner, a veteran whose presence was supposed to stabilize, but instead created division. Bonner was handed a max contract, a move criticized heavily by fans and analysts alike.
The DeWanna Bonner situation could have had a hugely negative effect.
Instead of unifying the locker room, Bonner's presence led to tension and isolation. Her sudden departure wasn't just about poor performance. It was an emergency measure to prevent deeper fractures. You've got to wonder, one insider asked.
I'm willing to bet you one of the fractures was a DeWanna Bonner group off to the side.
Did the Fever remove Bonner to stop the team from splitting further?
many different islands going on in this locker room. And last year, it seemed like everybody was on one single island.
Then there's Natasha Howard. Her tenure with the Fever has been marred by underwhelming performances and questionable loyalty. Howard has repeatedly shown more concern for opponents than her own teammates. When Caitlin Clark or Aaliyah Boston hit the ground after tough fouls, Howard looked the other way. Fans noticed.
Talking about the Natasha Howard play, much more care, much more concern, much more worry than anytime Caitlin Clark's been knocked to the ground, anytime Aaliyah Boston's been punked, anytime Lexi Hull's been beat up, Sophie Cunningham's been beat up. Any more concern about somebody on the other team than from her own team.
Analysts noticed. And crucially, teammates noticed. Despite this, Howard continues to play heavy minutes, fueling rumors of favoritism from head coach Stephanie White, who previously coached Howard in Connecticut. This points directly to White, whose strategy, if you can call it that, is coming under serious fire. White inherited a Ferrari, but seems intent on driving it like a tractor. Her offense is sluggish, outdated, and stifles Caitlin Clark's natural explosive style. Fans call it puke ball, basketball malpractice in real time.
Everybody's on their own little island. We're going to get back to that real quick. Listen to what Stephanie White said in the offseason.
But surrounding Caitlin and Aaliyah and Kelsey with the right people is more important. But the number one thing that each one of those players said when we got the job and we started free agency was take care of our locker room.
Woo! And you did a shit.
Clark's dynamic college style of fast breaks, open spaces, and creative freedom is now replaced with static, unimaginative basketball. Even when the Fever momentarily break free from White's rigid structures, showcasing brilliant chemistry between Clark and Aaliyah Boston, these flashes are quickly suffocated by rigid adherence to White's playbook.
This year, we are just full of adversity, full of divisiveness, full of disruption in the locker room.
But the crisis isn't just strategic, it's cultural. Multiple creators online have dissected the Fever's locker room into literal islands. Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and Lexi Hull form one faction. Natasha Howard, Sydney Colson, and Brianna Turner anchor another, with Turner off reading activism books alone on her own social justice warrior island. Players like Aaliyah Boston and Dantas are caught awkwardly in the middle. It's not just a difference in basketball philosophy, it's about deep-seated cultural divisions, social agendas, and personal politics tearing the locker room apart.
Everything about the Fever last year was protect the locker room, protect the locker room, protect the locker room, and it doesn't sound like the locker room's in a good spot.
And now we see the consequences play out brutally on the court. In critical moments, Caitlin Clark stands alone. She's knocked down repeatedly, physically battered and emotionally unsupported. The unity that defined the Fever last year is gone. They scored 35 points on us in one quarter, Sophie Cunningham lamented, calling out the team's lack of discipline and focus. When your own veteran publicly admits that the team is fundamentally broken, you don't just have a problem, you have a full-blown crisis.
We are realistically, as a whole, getting very close to just riding off the season. And that would be a fair enough thing to just ride off the season at this stage, if we're being honest. Like, it's just not all around a good situation.
The Fever front office, Amber Cox and Kelly Krauskopf, have tried to duck blame, leaving White out front as the scapegoat. But fans aren't fooled. One viral commentator mocked their attempts to hide, likening them to Bart Simpson hiding in the bushes. They failed to scout internationally, failed to build around Caitlin's strengths, and chose vanity signings over basketball intelligence.
Stephanie White failed, Amber Cox failed, and Kelly Krauskopf failed at doing the bare minimum.
Despite all this turmoil, Caitlin Clark has remained professional, poised, and fiercely competitive. She leads the league in assists, breaks viewership records, and carries the franchise on her shoulders. But there's a limit to how much one player can bear, no matter how talented or resilient.
So far, let's be real, this season has been a disaster.
Sophie Cunningham's explosive press conference wasn't just a complaint, it was a cry for help. An SOS signal to fans, management, and teammates. The Fever have a choice. Continue down this path of division and decline, or finally start building around Caitlin Clark properly. Fans have made their voices heard loud and clear. Clark deserves better.
The good teams can keep the locker room together.
It's a simple truth, but one the Fever seem to be ignoring. Sophie's revelation was blunt because the situation demands it. Caitlin Clark's tenure with the Fever was supposed to usher in a golden era, not a culture collapse. But unless drastic, immediate action is taken, this crisis will worsen, jeopardizing not just this season, but potentially the future of one of the most gifted athletes the WNBA has ever seen. The question now is, will Indiana listen? Or will they squander a generational talent by failing to protect her when it matters most?